Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. It's always a good time to talk about jealousy.
Always, particularly when one lives with a jealousy researcher.
Right. So I want to talk about a specific type of jealousy. We've talked about jealousy before, and in my jealousy masterclass, I really dive into so many different types of jealousy, and I find it very helpful to break down the different types of jealousy. Or another way we could think about this is the different kinds of situations that inspire jealousy in us. And then there's this one that was coined by Jessica Fern when she wrote Polysecure. As far as I know, that's when the term was coined, called justice jealousy.
I like that. It really captures it, to my mind.
Well, it does. So let's talk about justice jealousy, because I get questions all the time about, okay, well, now that I know what it is, what do I do about it? So I want to talk about what it is, when it comes up, and what I have seen people can do to move through it, because we don't want to get stuck in any kind of, I don't want to get stuck in any emotional state. No. Honestly, I don't want to be stuck in it. I want to be able to move dynamically in my emotions.
Okay. So what is it?
Well, let's define jealousy first. Because I like to talk about jealousy from the basis.
The terms. Yep.
Okay. So jealousy is the complex emotion that arises when we detect a threat to a valued relationship. Jealousy can be differentiated from envy because jealousy has this triangle. Jealousy is about when I am worried in some way about a current relationship being interrupted by a perceived interrupter. Now, envy is the longing to be what the other is or have what they have. So envy is about me feeling something toward one other person. Jealousy is about me getting caught in this triangular situation. And I think that the term justice jealousy might be a little bit of a misnomer, because in fact, justice jealousy may be a little bit closer to envy than to jealousy.
Okay.
But we'll parse this out. We'll see where it goes.
All right, let's see where it goes.
So the reason I'm sorting out jealousy and envy is because justice jealousy is when we are struggling with some frustration or irritation or sadness that a partner that we have is able to and willing to provide something to a new partner that they weren't able or willing to provide for us in the past.
Okay.
So there is a triangle, because we're seeing how, okay, I'm seeing this comparison between what my partner is able to provide for their new partner that they weren't able to provide for me or weren't willing to provide for me. On the other hand, often there's this envy. I wish I were having this. I wish I were getting this. And envy and jealousy can show up together. In fact, they frequently do. Envy is much more related to the comparison element that we often think of in jealousy when I compare myself, usually negatively, to this perceived interrupter. So to my mind, it's only important that we get these terms straightened out so that we are able to deal with them effectively. It's really not being pedantic in my perspective. This is about, I want to be thoughtful in my approach to these experiences. Mm-hmm. And justice jealousy can be absolutely overwhelming. So when I talk about jealousy, I talk about the archetypal level of jealousy. When jealousy reaches a certain level, it touches into something so much bigger than the personal. And it can be like a tidal wave, knocking us off our feet. And I find that justice jealousy is one of the forms of jealousy that seems to bring us to that state. It can frequently be way more than just an irritation. It goes into full-on rage because we feel a sense of injustice.
Injustice. And I can think of two styles of this.
Tell me.
So this is when I feel I see you providing for someone else something that I haven't gotten from you. Mm-hmm. And I see two ways for that to have gone. Like in the past, that was like, which I guess everything like that is in the past. You can't have given me something in the future. But So if I ask you for something and you don't give it to me, and then you go and give it to somebody else, justice jealousy. Like, hey,
Ouch.
why not me? If I don't ask you, but I want it, and you don't give it to me, and
Also
then you give it
ouch.
to someone else, also out. So those are the two styles that I see. And I don't I don't know how much that, like how different those two might be, but I feel like the moves from there
Right. I think
would
when
be
we talk
different.
about working with it,
Hmm.
sure, it's going to make a huge difference because often what we're talking about when justice jealousy comes up is really a retroactive pain. So it's often bringing to the surface an unmet need for that may have existed for weeks or months, but often has existed for years or decades. So let's give some examples. Let's make this more
Yeah.
real, right?
Okay.
So some things that you might have been asking a partner for or have been wanting from a partner and you didn't ask or you didn't know how to ask or you didn't even know it was possible until you saw it. Um, Planning dates, managing calendars, feeling really seen, like feeling someone's attention directed right
Hmm.
at you,
Right.
emotional attunement, or initiating sex, or initiating certain kinds of sex, or participating in certain kinds of activities,
Yeah.
um,
Travel, things like
or
that.
or having a
Um,
child for that matter. I mean,
oh,
we
sure.
could make this
Yeah, we
really
can go to
big
the big
too,
ones like having sex with other people.
right? But anything that we have wanted at some point and then we see provided to a new partner could elicit feelings of justice jealousy. And the reason it gets so complex so fast is I think you're spot on. It has to do with one, did we negotiate? Did we try to get
Hmm.
this? So we
Hmm.
may actually feel really frustrated because we've asked and negotiated and requested and maybe gone to counseling and done all the things and asked for this kind of engagement. And the either the outright answer was no, but even more frequently, what happened was we just didn't get it. The person may have even continually said, I'll work on it, but it just didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Hmm.
And so we feel the pain over that. Um, on the other hand, if I didn't know something was possible, or I had no way to, I didn't understand how to verbalize this, or if we just had a culture of not making requests in our relationship,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then I see you providing something, that can elicit just as painful a situation. I don't think we should say one of these is worse than the other.
Definitely
They're
not. Yeah.
different feelings. You have a pretty straightforward example of this in your history. You feel like sharing just
Well,
as a
that's why I brought it up. So, um, my sexual relationship with my first in my first marriage wasn't what I wanted it to be. I wanted there to be more sex, and then she wanted to have sex with somebody else. So she did, and there was this weird.
and it was consensual. Like
Yeah,
you
it
consented.
was consensual. We talked about it, and what we didn't talk about because I didn't bring it up was, well, hey, wait a minute, but what? But I've been wanting to have more sex, and now you're going to go have sex with someone else, and so now, so am I? Hey, what's going on here?
But you didn't have the hey, what's going on
I did
here
not have that conversation.
conversation.
Hmm.
I think that's a pretty common experience. I One of the things that has come up for me is the calendar thing. It sounds small, but I, for years, managed our calendar, our shared calendar, because we were most of our life, you and I, revolved around a business that we were running together and
Yeah.
young children and homeschooling. And so I managed the calendar. You also had your own calendar, but I managed all of the conjoint calendar.
Yeah.
And then that meant I also planned all of our dates and put in the
Yes.
effort
Right.
to making sure that
Hmm.
we had together time. And when you started dating other people, especially new people who you just met and you weren't friends with already, all of a sudden you had the capacity to hold a calendar and you knew how to call and arrange for a hotel. And and I knew you knew those things. So I am familiar with this from the inside. I'm familiar with it in me bringing up feelings of rage that seemed outsized to what was happening. Because all that was happening from my perspective was it seemed so much smaller than what you're describing. I was feeling like, wait, you know how your fucking Google Calendar works? awesome. Could you try planning dates for us? And it feels really small in comparison to you, who I know for years went with a significantly subpar experience of having access to sex at all. That feels like these feels like categorically different almost, but they really aren't.
Yeah, like what's your category though? I mean, I know I see what you mean, but well, then it comes down to the meaning we make out of them, right?
Right.
It's not like if if I didn't make if it didn't mean enough to me for me to have the conversation, then maybe it is in the same category or even a lower category than you who was like, but wait a minute, let's talk about this.
Well,
But we can assign the meaning from multiple different directions.
the reason I wanted to mention that is because retroactive pain, we often try to justify. We're trying to make it make sense, right? So we
Aha.
come up with all these reasons
Mhm.
why I should have had that thing. I should have gotten it. And I have seen you get really down on yourself and like get really self-recriminating about how you didn't negotiate for what you wanted. And I've seen you take that on as something that you have been regretful about,
Mhm.
but I didn't see you fully acknowledge how what this did in your life, what the justice jealousy itself. So when you experience this awareness of, hey, now this other person is getting the contact, the sex, the erotic overlap, and I'm not. Um, it damaged your relation. It didn't just damage your relationship with your partner; it damaged your relationship with this other person who you were
Yeah.
also friends with,
Yep.
and I don't know. I think it's important to mention how yes, the meaning we make out of it matters, but also how intricate our lives can get and then it can be hard to not blame the new person for this lack that we're experiencing
Yeah.
or for this
Yep.
injustice that we're experiencing.
Mhm.
And I've been the new person in that situation as well. So you poured tons of emotional attunement at me when we first started dating. And from my perspective, you were not providing the same level of emotional attunement to your established partner.
Yeah.
And I remember receiving a lot of, or what I perceived as a lot of vitriol, like a lot of anger. It largely tamped down, like deeply suppressed, but like coming out sideways, rage, because here I was getting the things she wanted, but didn't know to ask for. And it damaged our friendship, like to the point of that friendship no longer exists. And I felt so disempowered because it felt like the only thing I could do
Well,
was say, "Oh, don't emotionally attune to." I mean, I wouldn't have known those words to say 15
right.
years ago, but it felt like I was needing to just absent myself. And so in fact I did. I frequently would push you to plan dates with
Yep.
her or push you to do other things. I actually offered to leave multiple times, leave the relationship like dozens of times because I felt like I was interrupting. And you kept insisting that it wasn't me, it wasn't my problem and that I wasn't the one causing the problem. But I still felt the impact of
Right.
it.
I
It
mean,
was
it
really
doesn't
hard to like
yeah.
I don't feel like I have any I'm not empowered to do anything other than to leave the situation because I can't give this person the thing that they're looking for. They're not looking for it from me. In fact, I tried to meet their emotional attunement needs myself and it didn't do the same thing.
Right.
Um I I'm using this example. It's really intensely personal and it hurts because it just sucked so much.
Yeah.
It sucked,
It
I think, in every point of that particular
Mhm.
snarl. Perception is everything here. Like,
Yeah,
how we
right?
perceive this.
Mhm.
The pain I felt in this case where you were not planning dates, honestly, I just felt irritation. I was pissy. And I remember bringing it to you with an attitude. The first time I brought it to you, I think I may have been pretty reasonable, but as soon as I'd mentioned it once and it didn't get fixed immediately,
Mhm.
yeah, I was pretty pissy about it. Like,
Right.
are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Um, but in the other situations, like Mm. A lack of feeling like we have a way to address this when
Well,
it
that's it. I mean, you were getting what you described as vitriol. You were getting blamed for something that you had no agency around. Those were my behaviors, but it it damages the other relationship
it damages the
through
metamor
the
relationship a
metamor
lot.
relationship through and perception is everything through the wealth. I mean, this is why justice jealousy is a good word. It's not just justice envy, is because one very clear resolution is, okay, you go away.
Yeah.
And now my relationship returns to what it was, or has the potential to be what I want it to be. I mean, there are several holes in that logic, but we're not always clearly logical in
Well,
our
we're not. When
feelings.
jealousy shows up, we're
Yeah.
usually not
Yeah.
in our most rational prefrontal cortex
Hmm.
regulated state, right? We are often in our hindbrains. We are often super dysregulated and in a survival mechanism state. And it calls us into question, like, how do we deal with our relationships? Who's responsible for things? Because
Yeah.
now I'm glad we talked about the difference between jealousy and envy at the beginning, because the thing that's coming up for me now is this is a very classic Hera jealousy situation. When if Hera had her needs, so Greek mythology, Hera and Zeus married, like she's the goddess of marriage, among other things, but she's married, and she's married to someone who continually has other partners. Um, and Hera is not happy about it. Hera's super pissy. And Hera is violent over and over and over again. And she's not violent towards Zeus. She's
All right.
like she's turning people into bulls. She's setting them aflame. She's um, disguising herself and convincing an innocent young thing to convince Zeus to show his full form, which then burns her to smithereens. And she's constantly punishing the third, the interrupter, the perceived interrupter, and never looking to her husband and saying, bro, I think we got to work on this. And in her case, quite literally, bro, I think we got to work on this. And heretic jealousy is so painful to me because it misses the point. The only thing I can do is actually return to the relationship that I have, the negotiated relationship I have, and look to make the change there. And the change may not be available. And at that point, I have to acknowledge the reality that this person is capable and even willing to perform this act,
Hmm.
and they just won't do it for me.
Yeah, and situations of justice jealousy bring that home. Like, I can't ignore the fact, like, I've always thought maybe you could do this, but the situation hasn't come up, and now I can see it.
Yeah.
And personally, I see, sure, yep, there's jealousy, there's envy, and then there's, I don't know, envy's like uh, weird little brother, resentment.
Yeah.
Which is, and resentment can go in either direction, really. You can resent the third, or you can resent your partner, or both. But definitely when you came to me about the calendar, there was a lot of, like, that anger was resentment fueled anger. Like,
Right.
all these times that you didn't plan dates, every single one
Take
of those
responsibility for
is,
connection. Yeah.
and it wasn't so firmly in that bucket of resentment until you saw me
Yeah, well, I used to think you
doing
were a
it.
dope. I used to think you were
Right.
incapable.
I'm
I
just,
I legit was like, I don't know, like, I guess he just can't do this. And I had grown up in a household where, yeah, my father never once did that. And then I was married, and that was not a thing that was done. That was done when I was 16 and we were first dating. There was some planning and some dating, and then there was nothing at all. And so I had acclimated to the idea that cisgender men in heterosexual relationships just barely have that capacity, if at all. And so I just shrugged and kept asking, but in this, like, in a way that didn't really bring home that this was a major point of contention
Mhm.
and that I expected you to step up and that it was a bottom line requirement. In fact, because now it is a bottom line requirement. I won't even date someone casually if they won't plan at least 50% of our exchanges, because it's a bottom line requirement to be in relationship with me that you take responsibility for planning. But I didn't know to do that. So
Right.
yeah, it wasn't firmly in the category of resentment because I didn't even know that I could resent it. I thought I was just accepting what was possible out of a relationship with
Right.
someone who was enculturated as a man. And that brings up the question of, so how do we negotiate together? Because in those early days, you and I talked quite a lot about having negotiated relationships, about really
Yep.
asking for what we want
Yeah.
and collaborating on getting what we want. But we talked about it, but then we still struggled to do it. And I think a lot of people find themselves in this spot where we're getting the idea intellectually. I understand I need to do this. But then there's, I have to do it.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
hard.
And
I have to change
then
my habits, change my language.
deal with complexes that are getting in my way and doing these things, all of that.
Yeah.
And so this is a slight diversion from what we're talking about, but this is how I feel our relationship is growth focused is right. So that is a reason to negotiate for things that might not be easy. Because it would be if you and I sat down and we negotiated things, and I was like, "No, I'm not sure how to do that, so no, I'm not going to commit to that." Um, no, I can't. I don't. I just don't seem to do that, so I'm going to say no. I'm not. I can't plan dates. But I didn't want that. I actually want to be someone who does those things. I want to work through those things.
And you certainly didn't want to be seen as someone who could do
Certainly
those
didn't want
things.
to be seen as that dope that that you
Incompetent,
imagined.
childlike.
Right. And so I have to grow out of that incompetent, childlike person.
Right.
And back to the topic at hand, sometimes that's easier to practice with somebody else.
Yep.
And so, okay, yep, I can see that I can do this too. Maybe now I can turn it around and bring it back.
Okay, so now let's talk about fairness.
Yes, now let's talk
Fairness
about
has entered the chat.
Yes.
Okay. I think the number one thing that I talk to people about when we're talking about agreements that I want to unpack so that they can actually move forward making agreements is that fairness really isn't going to get you very far, because most of life isn't fair. As my mama told me, your mama probably told you, life ain't fair. So we have to remember that we can be in deep resentment. We can be really frustrated. We can feel the injustice, but just stomping our feet and demanding fairness, generally speaking, just doesn't work. I have rarely seen someone change what they're doing in their relationships because somebody's stomping up and down saying it's not fair. It puts us down both into this place of feeling wronged, and now because someone feels blamed, someone else feels like they don't have a fair agreement. So I'm bringing the word up just because the word itself, just saying this isn't fair, might be a trigger point. And we might actually need to take that word and kind of tuck it away and say, what are some other ways we can talk about this so that the word fair doesn't just keep triggering us both as we're trying to have a conversation? Because what I want to move to instead is, well, is everyone involved in this situation? Because we could be talking about a particular dyad, a couple of people. We could be talking about more. But who here is up for addressing what's going on? Who is up for that? And I mean, like, in the situation you're talking about, if you had went to your first spouse and you had said, hey, I want to talk about my sexual needs. I would like to talk about that with you. Are you available to address this with me? It's a very different
Yeah,
question.
very different.
And
Yeah.
also let's her lean in and decide whether she wants to be part of that.
Yep.
Being willing to receive a no is a big deal. Sometimes the only answer we're going to get is a no. And sometimes we just have to accept that. Because I think about having gone to you and asked you for, more planning, more thoughtful time together. And you said yes, but you didn't really mean it. You didn't mean you were going to expend the energy to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
You were up for, by your statements, you were up for addressing the problem, but you didn't know what to do.
Right.
And so you would just say it. You would pay lip service to it. This is why I think a lot of people wind up in my office saying, like, we need help. We need somebody else to navigate this, because we just keep having this conversation.
Yeah.
And we can't even get to the point where we're both on the same page that there's something to be addressed. And that's because we get defensive. We get freaked out about resentment. Sometimes we want to rush to forgiveness. Like, we want to I can't be in the wrong here. So I need my partner to just forgive me and move on. There's usually repair to be done.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in the situation we're talking about, we have had conversations previously about what, and we'll just use the example. So we had conversations about what you wanted, and I didn't give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that all by itself, since I had agreed to, and then I didn't, that all by itself requires repair.
Right.
That's
right. There's repair needs just from the
that.
over-promising and under-delivering.
Right. But then you take it a step further and you watch me do it elsewhere. And now it's not just, hey, you didn't do what you said you would do. It's you did it. You expended that energy, but not in this direction. So there's a whole other level of repair that.
Well, yeah. And at the same time, you said, yeah, sometimes it feels possible to play out a new pattern with someone new, and it still doesn't feel possible in the original relationship that I was talking about. What if there is no repair that can happen? What if we actually need to just decide, yeah, this is something that we just can't quite get on the same page about? Well, I just want to make space for the fact that
sounds like
sometimes there is no repair. Sometimes we have to decide that what our partner is able to give us and is willing to show up and give us, even if they're paying lip service to it, like, no, but they're just not. And to continually come back and say, well, you can do it over there, so I insist you do it here.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, actually, they don't have to. And now it's up to, do I want to say, this is a deal breaker for this relationship, so we need to renegotiate the whole relationship?
Yeah.
Because that is an edge for me. That's a boundary. And I'm going to say, I see that you have this capacity. I see that you're unwilling to expend this capacity here for me. And I need that. I need that in my relationships. So what do we do?
And so
not all relationships are going to continue.
That's
forever.
right. And the thing is that that mismatch could go anywhere from a full-on deal breaker to, oh, well, I guess it just doesn't matter and I'm not going to worry about it. But there's a lot of different kinds of negotiations that can happen in between those two extremes.
Right. So there's another example that comes up, and it comes up for us personally, but it also, I see it all the time, and that's about initiating sex. Who initiates sex?
Yeah.
The ongoing conundrum of, like, who's putting in the energy to create an erotic scenario.
Yeah.
Is another place where, maybe I want to renegotiate. But sometimes, and I have noticed this around my own stuff, I also just get really angry. I have a complex around when partners won't initiate sex with me. I get complex. I get caught in the grips of my own shit around what that means. And so even though I I feel well, if you go out on a date, I know that you initiate sex with your dates. You have told me you do. You're very clear that that is how that happens, and you're able to. And if you don't initiate sex with me, it's not that you never do. It's that it feels like there's this bottomless pit in me that wants more and more and more. And that's not really about my relationship with you. That's about years and years, decades of feeling unwantable, unlovable, unsexy, whatever. And I want you to somehow fill that. I want you to heal that complex for me by initiating sex. I've decided in my head that initiating sex will heal that. And so I'm expecting and asking you to take care of that. And it feels then like the injustice that I'm experiencing because you're initiating sex with anyone. Like it also feels like I hold the bar so high that you can never really jump over it. Like, oh my God, I feel myself holding the bar so high. Like now, if you don't always initiate sex or you don't initiate it in a specific way or whatever, I can still be disappointed. And I'm bringing this up because I feel like it's obvious to me that that's my complex. That's my psychological junk to work on. But the line is fuzzy because you also have this habit of needing to have sex initiated for you. You don't like to initiate it. Like that has also been a habit. So it can be two things at once. It can be that I want my partner to do something more while also I'm having an outsized reaction to this lack. And I think this is why it gets so complicated to sort out justice jealousy and how to move forward. Because it's often there's a murky area of it's not that they never do this thing. It's that they don't do it enough, or I'm not receiving this feeling enough. Because you weren't having no sex with your partner in the description you gave earlier. You weren't having no sex. You just weren't having as much sex as you wanted. There's no normal amount of sex to have.
Right.
So how was she supposed to know?
And that is the first of the two, or actually the second of the two styles of justice jealousy that I mentioned, where, we never talked about it. So how would she know?
So you got to be resentful about something, which leaves you in a pretty well-defended position.
Right.
But I want to add in another piece now. It also leaves you feeling there can be this smugness, this self-righteousness of
position.
Now, this one-up position in Terry Real's framework, which is real convenient for your sexual shame. So your complex of sexual shame then can be like, awesome. Now, my need for feeling shame around sex can be met by this other person withholding sex from me. And I'm not mentioning it and she's not mentioning it. And now, because you're not simple. You aren't simple. We're all so complicated that sometimes we have needs that are truly horrendous. I mean, I have a need to fight and push that I don't think that's a good thing about me. My desire, my visceral need to fight so hard, I don't applaud that in myself, but there it is. And so I have to work with it. I have to work with it pretty gently because I can easily project that onto you and make it seem like you're letting me down so that I can fight. And this is where I think justice jealousy gives us this opportunity to dive into like, wow, how am I showing up in my relationship? How am I co-creating this situation?
Co-creating the situation. Yeah. And, it strikes me the way you just described it, that sure, there's, we all participate in the relationships we're in. We're not we're never in a relationship alone. There's always somebody else and they bring their things in. And when I think about justice versus fairness or equity versus fairness, I think about that cartoon of the three different height people at the fence. And when they all have the same size box, it does the short person no good. And the person who could already see over the fence is now standing on a box. Like that that's fair. That's like what I think of as fair. Everybody gets a box. That's not good enough. Now,
It doesn't actually address
it doesn't address the issue.
needs.
So you take
Yeah.
the box away from the person who can already see over the fence, give it to the short person. Now everybody sees over the fence. This person got 2 boxes. That person got no boxes. Is that fair? And this is why fair doesn't mean anything. What are we looking for? We're looking for a sense of justice and equity, and ultimately in these relationships, we're looking for relationality. So,
so you and I have talked about needing to meet our various needs, and we have different trauma histories.
Yeah. So we have very different needs.
Same thing. We have very different needs. We also have different desires, different wants.
And not just different trauma histories, different psychological development histories. Like my sexual shame doesn't come from any trauma. It just came out of the way I was, like the beginning part of my life.
And there it is.
It's just, but there it is, because this is, and
because I have all kinds of sexual trauma and very little sexual shame.
Right. Yeah.
It would be silly for us to be super gentle around my sexual shame and not yours, just because I am the person with violent sexual trauma history.
Right.
That doesn't, because that's just not how it manifested. And I had to go to several therapists to prove to myself that was true, because I kept thinking, no, I must be all fucked up this way. No, actually, for whatever reason, I've been able to make some pretty decent sense out of it. And so it's not causing me it's not causing me trouble. But you, who had this gentle experience of your upbringing in comparison, manifested a whole bunch of sexual shame that, I mean, at 57 years old, I think we still talk about your sexual shame outside of the podcast, because obviously it comes up here, but in our day-to-day life, 3 or 4 times a week, it might come up on a week where you're feeling down. And rarely would we go a month without it peeking its head over the...
And I bring this up because in these situations of justice jealousy, and the situation that you described about dating and whatnot, so you talked about raising the bar, about, maybe you do something with it that you don't need to do. Okay, yeah. So you come to this situation with a set of things that you want to work through, as well as a desire. And so do I. So we can get caught up in the justice of it. And we can definitely talk about repair, but the repair is going to come from, well, I will come to you and I will work with you on repair for what your experience was of it, not the meaning I make of your experience of it. It's really not relevant. I want to know what your experience was, and I want to work from there. And then I'd like you to do the same.
Can you say that again? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah. So when we have had a conflict of any kind, let's stick to this justice jealousy, can I arrange dates for us situation. When it comes to a head and you're like, hey, I saw you planning dates for this other person, but you don't plan them for me. I can get all caught up in whatever of my stuff I want to, or, and this is my preferred move, I can find out as much as possible about what your experience of this is.
Yeah.
And just work to repair it. Work to talk with you, work to understand it.
So you can believe me that it hurts me.
Yes. You're not trying to manipulate me into going on the dates that we both want to go on. This isn't a manipulation. And I think this is something that people get caught up on. And the reason I say that is because I have felt it in myself. Like, oh, you're coming and you're like mad at me and you're trying to get me to do something. Trying to get me. You're trying to manipulate. You're trying to control me. No, actually, you're trying to communicate to me what one of your wants and how you could get it. And we have already talked about how we would like to work together to make this happen. That isn't a manipulation, but there are parts of me that are like, oh, we're being controlled, put up the walls.
Yeah.
Instead, forget about all that. Deal with it later. And in this moment, okay, tell me, Start dealing with whatever repair is necessary in this moment, whatever understanding.
Yeah. And for me, that might look like needing to be heard
Mm-hmm.
for what's happening. And I would be looking for you to stay in a non-defensive position for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
for probably several conversations of keep that defensiveness down and just hear what I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And
And during that time, keeping my defenses down requires me to trust that you will hear me
mhm.
when that you are not ignoring my experience, that you're not steamrolling it. You just have a need to express, and you would like to be heard.
So the format of the Imago dialogue
Yeah.
works really well for this. And we've used it both formally and informally. And I find that when we're talking about issues of justice jealousy, the formal use of the Imago dialogue is really helpful. So we can link back. I think that's episode 128 or 29. We can link back to that because participating in an Imago dialogue it's creating space to hear the impact of the situation for your partner. And then you flip it so there is time for the other person to be
Mm-hmm.
heard and seen. And here's where we can get really creative. It's possible that you would have said to me something along the lines of, yeah, I have no idea how to fix this for us because for whatever reason, I don't want to plan dates for us. I don't even know why exactly. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't align with my values, but I don't seem to want to. That's a hard place to be, but
But that would then allow
it's
us.
honest.
It's honest and would allow us to have conversations
Right.
about that might allow us to grow
So when I
around
shift that into the conversation around initiating sex, I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
went for years where I just committed to, yeah, okay, I'm going to initiate sex because one, it's easier for me, and two, I I don't want to get caught up in working through your sexual shame every time we try to have sex because
Right.
every time you tried to initiate sex, then you would get triggered into your sexual shame
Yeah.
place. I'm like, you know what?
This is
Instead,
kind of
even though it's imbalanced, even though this
yeah.
feels unjust, I'm going to decide to prioritize my own needs in this and say, you know what, I don't want to have to move into the role of either therapist or taking space from you so that I don't have
Yeah.
to be in that space. So instead, I'm going to do what I do to initiate sex. And we did that for years before the work you were doing on your shame had taken hold deeply enough for you to be able to pretty smoothly initiate sex. And it's still not all the time. Like you
Correct.
go through ups and downs.
Yep.
And that's part of acknowledging the fact that we're just very different people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are connecting with other partners, I've noticed this when we're playing all together in a space, especially, there's just different aspects of you that come forward. There are these aspects of you that I know they're performative.
Mm-hmm.
You're performing a role. You're actually, I see you. I'm going to make this is my assessment of them. I don't know whether it's true. I see you performing masculinity. Like, this is what a man does. They initiate sex and they do this. And you don't perform your masculinity for me, which
Yeah.
I'm glad. It means I actually know you at a much deeper level. And more than that, I've created a space where your gentle self can feel held and home. And you don't do that. So I don't when I am able to really look holistically at the situation and see like, oh, well, I don't want you performing your masculinity for me. So I will accept this imbalance. And at the same time, I have asked you to continue doing your own work to see what can be unpacked so that you can initiate from a place that's authentic to you, not performative.
So that was pretty cool what you just did there.
Talking about our sex life, I do it all the
Acknowledging
time
the
now.
complexity. Yeah, well, that's all. I mean, I always love that. But okay, so justice jealousy. It's now looking to me like it's this superficial response that if you use it, I mean, this is how you train people to work with jealousy. If you use it as the marker that, hey, there's something to work on here, and then
Yeah.
you dive into it and you do that repair, and then you have the follow-up discussions of what's really going on. There's going to be a lot of material in there if what you want is to grow together.
Right. So jealousy in my framework is an opportunity for deeper intimacy with yourself and
Right.
others.
Now, and just like, I mean, it is jealousy. So it is also true that if it's an abusive situation, if this
Right.
justice jealousy is a manifestation of abuse of any kind, obviously
Right.
that's
So
not what it is. It's not just a marker
someone,
to grow on. It's something to
well,
address.
it would still be an invitation to intimacy with yourself to deepen, like, wait, what's going on? Because I am being triggered into this
Right.
alertness. This is why I don't want jealousy to be cured.
Yeah.
I want it to act as the alert system it is
Right.
for, oh, something's wrong here. But if, for instance, you bring this to a partner and their response is to behave in violent ways or to reverse the attack on you, right? To pull a classic Darvo move of reverse their defenses and attack the person who's sharing their feelings with them. Yeah, obviously we're going to need to actually turn to our own therapeutic methods and go
Right.
and
Yeah.
deal with, hey, I think I'm actually in an abusive or manipulative or coercive relationship. I got to figure out what I'm going to do here. Before we wrap up, though, I wanted to talk about the role of forgiveness in all of this.
Okay, tell me about that, because
So
I know a little bit about your relationship with forgiveness.
you mean that I don't like it?
That it is a suspicious thing.
Yeah. So that's it. It's suspicious. I actually do. I think I've grown quite a lot in my approach to forgiveness, and I can appreciate it in a way that I wasn't able to, a younger version of me.
Well, I've learned a lot and have a different relationship to it than I used to as well.
So when I was growing up, I was taught to forgive was tied all together too closely with forgetting, and then I have no data storage, right? If I'm going to forget that a harm happened, that I felt that I felt something come up that was so intense that now I have experienced upheaval, rupture, and now we've done some repair, maybe we've done an apology and accountability ladder, whatever we've done. But to insist that forgiveness has to happen, to my mind, is an injury in itself. That is an injury. And because I need to allow forgiveness to come at its own pace, but also forgiveness, I need to disentangle it from the idea of forgetting, because
Yes.
a better definition.
Go ahead. All right. So that is an injury to your pattern recognition and your self-protection.
Right. So the actual definition that psychologists usually use for forgiveness is the releasing of vengeful and resentful feelings toward a person or a group who has harmed you. But the releasing of those feelings, the feelings of vengefulness, the feelings of fierce ferocity, right? The releasing of those feelings is not the same as condoning the action that happened,
Right. Yep.
or forgetting. And I think it was because I was brought up with a forgive and forget. And I will totally lean into forgiveness as long as people stop asking me to forget, because in fact, I need those data points. I need to understand what has happened. And now I need it because I am researching and looking at relationships across a longitudinal scale. And I want to keep that memory to allow me to see what patterns can help me understand about the future. But also because that's my experience. And it feels very humiliating to a part of me to say, like, now you have to forget, which would be like an act of, well, I'm going to have to actually like do something, because I don't forget easily. I have a strong memory and I don't forget very easily. But forgiveness can play a role here, because when I think back to the situations that we talked about earlier, moving forward and collaborating on how we meet our actual needs. Like, okay, I want you to initiate sex more, and you also want to be part of, you want to feel more comfortable initiating sex.
Mhm.
Okay, allowing myself to move into a place of letting go, releasing those feelings of anger and resentment is what lets me move into the space of collaborating with you again, rather than holding this acrimony that
Mhm.
I think you mentioned it earlier, that either or, like
Yeah.
you're wrong, I'm right.
Yep.
If we stay in that adversarial position, we can't really collaborate. So forgiveness does ring true to me as part of the process of dealing with justice jealousy, but we can't rush it. I think if
No,
we rush into forgiveness, that's usually placating and fawning behavior.
right. And that which this is how my relationship to forgiveness has changed is that's what I would do. Like I just wanted to move, well, yeah, I wanted to move back to the connection we had. You always wanted to move forward to the connection we'll have next
Yeah.
after we've resolved this situation.
Yeah. Which is so funny because I get so focused on institutional memory of our relationship, and you focus on a forward
Yeah.
moving
Right.
relationship.
Yep.
But the moves we have taken
Mhm.
around forgiveness are very much
Opposite.
opposite from
Yeah.
that. So I hope this conversation on justice jealousy has landed with people. This is a really complicated topic. If you're looking for more information on it, I would encourage anyone to join us for one of our monthly Ask Me Anythings. Ken and I are hosting Ask Me Anythings for the Playing with Fire community. And it's a great way to have actual interactions. Let's talk about what's coming up for you. I'd love to see you in there. Thanks for having this conversation, Ken.
Thank you.
There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliequiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.